me down again.
Okay, man, am I excited to be here today. We are sitting in, as you've read the title, a 996.2 GT3. So this car is actually my dream car. If you think about it, I can choose from all kinds of cars, but this 996 GT3 has been my dream car for probably about 2 or 3 years. The more I learned about the 996s, the more I started to fall in love with this particular version of the 996, the .2 GT3. Now, before I talk too much about this car, let's look at why I think the 996 demands much more respect than it actually has, by looking at the Evo Performance Car of the Year records. So, pardon my psycho killer handwriting. I did this when I had too much coffee. Starting in the year 1998, when the first 996 came out, the .1, the C2 won the award, first place, and it beat Lotus Elise 135 and also the Ferrari F355. And then the following year, in 1999, the 996.1 GT3 got released and it won again. It got first place and it beat the Ferrari 360 and also the Subaru Impreza RWS. But then in the year 2000, third year streak, the 996 Turbo, that's when they introduced the new turbo headlights, which then the .2 adopted, won again. So 3 years in a row, the 996 won first place. And finally, the streak was broken in the year 2001, but it lost to the Pagani Zonda C12S, and it also lost to the BMW E46 M3. Of course, the Zonda is amazing. I don't feel any bit sad that the 996 lost to the Zonda, but it's interesting to see that it also lost to the E46 M3. But it makes sense because in the year 2001 and 2002, nothing new from the 996 lineup actually came. And then in the year 2002, interestingly, NSX Type R, that's also one of the cars that I really wanted to try, but never had the chance. But in second place in 2002 was the 996.2 C4S. Pretty cool, right? C4S, that is the wide body Carrera 4, the non-turbocharged wide body with the red stripe lights in the back, the iconic C4S. I've never driven one. Personally, I prefer narrow body 996s, and that's one of the reasons why I called this GT3 my dream car. Is because it has a narrow body. And then we come to this car in the year 2003 when the .2 came out. The GT3 won again, and this time it won the Lamborghini Gallardo in second place, and interestingly the Renault Clio V6, which I also really want to try. And then that ends the reign of the 996. In the following year, 997.1 came out in 2004, and the C2S won also. That's pretty insane. pretty insane. Like, the number of Porsches on this list is just remarkable. In fact, I just drove a 997.1 C2S. It was a manual and I loved it. The shifter on that thing, I must say, is better than this. On the 997.1, it feels much more mechanical. Like when you shift into gears, there's a clink to it. There's this satisfying metal to metal clink to it. And this just feels rubbery and plasticky. And it's not helped by the painted plastic shift knob, which, you know, the shifter is one of the most important touch points on the car. And it would be nice if this was metal or some other material which is nicer than plastic. So I think it's a bit of a poor choice on their behalf. So there you have it. I can go further down the list, but let's not. But you can see the following years, 2004 to 2007, 997 also continues to win several ECOTY awards. So it's fair to say that the water-cooled Porsches, they've been excellent since the start. And I think the 996 had been treated unfairly because of the headlights. People talk about them all the time. They don't like it. I think they're really pretty. And the interior, okay, you look around. I used to have a 996.2 C2 which had the leather package, and I must say the interior quality on that car feels more luxurious. In here you have a lot of cheap materials, like here, this plastic, and over time it gets a bit sticky and it just doesn't look so good. However, if you take really good care of it, make sure you wipe it down, make sure there are no random patches of dirt and all that, it actually looks really nice. You know, it looks like a really driver-focused car. When you look at driver-focused air-cooled cars, let's say, for example, the Carrera CS, the 3.2, that car, I don't think anyone has anything bad about that car to say, but the interior on that car is totally Spartan. It has a really Spartan interior. The carpets are super thin. You open the frunk and you just have a thin sheet of carpet that's not even glued properly onto the bodywork, and it just looks flimsy. But people like that. People think that makes the car super focused. So why is it that people say that the 996 interior feels cheap? Isn't that a good thing if you're using the same mentality? I don't know. But I just love the way this car looks. In white, I love it even more. I never thought I would like a white 911, but I think the 96 generation of 911s is the most streamlined design. It just looks completely sculpted by wind. It's the most simplistic, the most flowy, the most elegant, and perhaps the most understated 911 design out there. And this is wrapped in a narrow body, and under all that elegance and none of that presumptuous aggressiveness is a really capable performance car. This car is magical to drive. If you don't believe me, you can refer to one of the most famous track driving YouTubers, the guy who drives the Nürburgring pretty much day in, day out, Misha. He just recently posted a video stating that the 996 GT3 is his all-time favorite car. And I think he would know something or two about driving feel or performance driving. So if that's what he thinks, then you should probably at least not overlook the 996 GT3 if you are shopping for a collectible 911. Something about this particular car, you can see on my B-rolls, it's pristine. It's like a brand new car. The previous owner, he parked it in an air conditioning room. It was spotless. Since my friend and I bought this car, we've added a few battle scars, but you know, we still do our best to keep it as mint as possible. You look at the engine bay, the front, it is completely clean. This interior, these seats, they look unused. I know this is the passenger seat, but driver's seat is in just as good condition. And if you haven't seen already, there is a half roll cage in this car, which means this is the Club Sport. But what does it mean, Club Sport? Well, in terms of driving, it doesn't really, there isn't really much of a difference. So we have the bucket seats. I don't know if these are specific to the Club Sport, but you can see the back of the buckets are body color matched, which is probably one of my favorite things about this car, even though I don't want to admit it. I just love how it's got this white console in the middle and matched with the white bucket seats, and it's all matched with the body color of the car. Oh, I love it. And then in the front we have emergency battery cutoff switch, which you can access with the front closed. You just have to put your finger in there and pull it out. Just pretty cool. And with the Club Sport package, I am supposed to have a racing harness, but unfortunately the previous owner lost it. I don't know, it's not there. It didn't come with the car, so that is a shame. I wish this car came with the full thing. Both of them have the dual mass flywheel. The Dot 1 came with a single mass, so some people say it's more raw, but I don't know. You can take your pick. I think both of them are great. But the Dot 2 benefits from a larger displacement, so from a 3.4 to a 3.6, and with that you get more torque, more power, so why not? And does it feel like the engine is not as revvy as it could be? Maybe. When I compare it to the 991.1 GT3, that engine feels a lot revier than this. But the Metzger engine has a character to it, which is truly unique. It has this growl and this burbliness, which almost feels like a mix between a boat and a muscle car. It burbles when idling. It does the burp, 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 burp sound, which is just really cool. And then when you're just driving on low loads, it makes all these mechanical noises, and the newer cars don't do that at all. So that's one of the charms of this car. This particular car has a few mods, a few tasteful mods, I must add. Aftermarket clutch, so it is stiffer, but I'm telling you, this clutch is so good. It's so predictable. The biting point is, you know exactly where it is, and it bites every time. There's zero slip, and it doesn't stall as well. It's not difficult. It's so easy, but instant bite at the same time. I don't know how they make it this good. This is one of the best clutches that I have ever used. It makes all other clutches feel terrible. This shifter is, like I mentioned earlier, it's a short shift. I've tried another Dot 2 GT3 with stock clutch and stock shifter. Yeah, you can feel it requires a bit more effort to put into gear, but overall the shifter is not entirely the best. Porsche has made other shifters that are much better. For example, like the one in the 997.1, which I've tried. That is just magical. This is maybe a 7 out of 10 at most, but it's precise, so when you're driving fast you won't be making mistakes. But in terms of driving pleasure, it could be a bit better than that. This car has the PCCBs, the ceramic brakes, and so no complaints, zero complaints. They're excellent. We took this car on a track day, probably did 60 laps in that day, and no problems, no fade, no nothing. Every time you stomp on the brakes, it is entirely predictable every single time. And the braking power is perfect. I don't think I need more braking than that. It's perfectly matched to the power of the car, Which brings me to the engine. The engine is about 380 horsepower, just enough. It's not scary fast, but it's fast enough to feel like you don't need more speed. And everything in this car just feels well balanced and well matched. The handling, the braking, the power, it all feels like a very synergetic package. Okay, enough talking. Let's put on the seatbelt and let's start the car. So what's it like to drive? Well, when you're going slow like this, I don't know if you can tell from the camera motions, there's a lot of moving about. It's reminding you that you're in a sports car, that's for sure. That's the nicest way I can put it. But is it uncomfortable? Is it discomforting? Not really. I think partially because of these seats. They're really spongy. Even though the seat cushion is very thin, it's really spongy and nice. It really absorbs a lot of the harshness coming from the suspension. You can constantly hear that the engine is indeed in the back and it's making all kinds of weird noises. Not so much intake noises, it's more like mechanical and exhaust noises, but mostly mechanical noises. The stock exhaust on this car is actually pretty quiet, and I personally would prefer if it were a little bit louder. When you push it, it does become loud and it sounds great all the way going to red line. But it's not as magical, it's not as crazy and frantic as the newer 4-liter engines or even the 3.8 on the 991.1. That car when rev to red line is insane. This is more like a constant flat torque curve. It doesn't really explode at any point of the rev range. The newer cars, it really explodes from 7,000. I must say the newer engines just feel a bit racier. Wow, I can see how much the camera is shaking. That's a first, but it doesn't feel uncomfortable somehow. This camera never shakes this much when I'm driving. This is new, but I don't feel uncomfortable. Maybe it's the frequency. It just happens to be the resonance frequency of the camera held on by the cap. This engine is really capable. It almost feels like it's more tuned for the road than the track. What I mean is there's plenty of torque down low. I mean, it starts pulling all the way since 3,000. So 3,000 now, I give it, and then it just goes. It just pulls. It has so much torque. In fact, it has so much torque that you don't really need to give it throttle when you put it in, when stationary and you put it into first gear. The torque of the idling engine will just move the car, no problem. And that's part of the reason why you can use such an aggressive clutch. It's because this engine is so torquey. Now, of course, this car is not just all engine. It's the main thing about this car is the handling, and the front end is like any good 911 should be. So light and dainty, so easy to move, so delicate. And if you want, you can get the rear to step out. Just give it a bit more gas. I'm keeping it in third now because this engine has torque. Don't get on the gas too early because it will understeer. Once you get past that point, there's a certain angle when you just know. It's completely intuitive. When you just know, you can mash the gas. Before that angle, then you will cause understeer. I don't know what the number is, what the mathematics are, but this car is so intuitive that you know exactly when you can mash it. On other cars, it's not as predictable. So with that predictability and that lightness of the front end, this car is just such a pleasure to drive. And I'm telling you, none of the newer 911s, none of the newer GT cars will feel as raw as this car. This car is, in terms of driving feel, is probably one of the best water-cooled experiences that you can get. I have driven a few air-cooled. I've driven, probably my favorite one was the 3.2 Carrera CS. It's full of driving feel. It makes this car feel a bit numb, to be frank. However, this car beats it completely in terms of sharpness. So I feel like it's kind of a trade-off where with the newer cars, of course the 992, the 991, they are far sharper than this, but you lose a lot of that driving feel. And so I think this, the 996 GT3, is the best of both worlds. You still get the modern sharpness, but also you retain a lot of the old school rawness of these cars. And that's why I believe very bad shift. And that's why I believe the 996 GT3 should be on everyone's dream car list. The body just, the chassis just moves around so much. It dances. It's so communicative. I can get it to step a little bit and catch it. Brakes are excellent. Yeah, ABS light came on. So one of the common problems with this car is that the plastic clips that hold the ABS sensor, they tend to go bad and become loose, and that causes a faulty reading for the ABS sensors, which generates this error right here, which means now I don't have ABS, but it's okay. I don't need it for now because I'm not going crazy. So it's still perfectly safe. It's not raining, so it's okay. One other thing that I totally love about this car is it has no driving modes. You just get in and you drive. There's only one mode, the only mode that you should be driving this car in. It doesn't have PASM, it doesn't have sport exhaust, it doesn't even have traction control. You think about it. This is as pure as it can be. For anyone's weekend car, you just want to get in and drive. You don't want to have to get in and fiddle with whatever buttons or LCD screen. You just want to get in, start the car, and just go. And that's why I love this car. I also love the white dials on this. It's beautiful. I love this car. It's awesome. I can't believe I thought about selling it the other day, but I talked myself out of it. Thankfully, it was right when Misha posted the video telling the world that his all-time favorite car is the 996 GT3, and that's when I thought, what am I doing? Why did I even consider selling this car? So now I know I'm not gonna sell this car. Oh man, traffic is not the best. I love the way it moves. I love how precise and delicate the front end of this engine is. And when you give it gas, it's like a shove from the back. It's shoving you. You can totally tell that this is rear engine. The dynamics of this is just bleeding-tastic. It's so damn good. The way that it corners, like during the mid-corner when you're doing all these minute adjustments on the steering and the throttle, and sometimes even braking, it feels like a Thai boxer. You know how a Thai boxer, they like to stand on their back leg and the front leg will be bouncing up and down, where they would prod and tip the opponent. It feels like that. All the weight is on the back and the front end is always moving, always adjusting. And even though these roads are not the best, it handles it like a champ. I know the braking distance on this exactly because it's so predictable, so easy. The car feels light. Even though it's not the lightest car, I mean, my Civic Type R is even lighter than this, but the chassis is so nimble. It's just amazing. This is what a dedicated sports car should drive like. Back to the narrow body, it's the perfect size for roads like these. We don't get big wide roads like in the US. A narrow body car is so much more playful. You have much more space to move around in. Look at this single lane, I can move around left and right. You can't do that with a 992. 992 will feel uncomfortable right in this lane. Downshifting is easy as heck. Heel and toe is, of course, easy. You can rev match it exactly the way you want it to. Even though the rev matching, you have to blip the throttle a little bit deeper than, let's say, the Civic Type R, but it only takes 1 or 2 blips for you to adjust to it. It's not difficult at all. Whew. Now, even though I wasn't even driving that fast or doing anything crazy, I felt the rush when driving it, just because every time you turn the wheel mid-corner, you can just feel this fizziness just resonating all throughout your body. It's amazing. Not many cars can give you this feeling. And when you're idling, there are these bursts of vibrations where it just goes like brup, brup, and it may feel like roughness, but this is the character of the Metzger engine. This is how it's meant to be. Kudos to the previous owner in keeping it in such pristine condition. I mean, he really did an excellent job. I feel highly responsible in keeping it in the same condition as I bought it and as much as I can. But I'm not gonna get out of the way and not drive the car just to keep it in that condition. If I get the chance to drive the car, I'm gonna drive the car, because this car, it's all about the driving, man. It's all about the driving. And I believe these things will only appreciate. So if you have one of these, don't be afraid to drive it. Just drive it, man. It's so damn good. It's excellent. I just love all these noises. What are all these noises? Even when going damn slow, it's so pleasurable to drive. Everything vibrates. Just a damn fizzy car. Oh, neighbors. And we are back. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. That was fun.